Tom, if you could just tell us, why are farmers in the news in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to get into the differences as well between how farmer politics plays out in India, because I'm conscious of significant farmer protests going on in India over recent years, sort of on and off, and it would be good to get into that as well. The immediate cause of the farmer protest in the UK, that's just going on, that we had a big protest in London last week, as you say, and there's a lot of disquiet about it, is a change to inheritance tax rules in the budget, which is a bit less than a month ago now, where at the moment, or previously, well, still at the moment, if you are a farmer, you're exempt from inheritance tax on your farm, which everyone else would pay on their property when they die. And what Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has done is to change that to bring farms in scope of inheritance tax. There's still a high threshold, so that I think it's farms up to a value of $1 million won't be taxed, and there's an allowance for spouses, so it goes up to 2 million in effect. A lot of farms will be exempt, but nevertheless, we're going from a situation where farms don't have this tax to pay to one where they do have tax to pay. The obvious reason for that, it's a really simple justification, is a fairness argument. Everyone else pays inheritance tax on their assets, or their families do when they die. Why shouldn't farmers be the same? And one of the immediate reasons for wanting to do it from the government's point of view is that because farms are exempt from inheritance tax, that's made them quite a good investment for certain kinds of investor who may or may not be farmers as such. They're people who just want to buy up land and pass the wealth that's inheriting that down to their descendants as time goes on, which they wouldn't be able to do with other forms of property. So I think whatever you think about the law, and we can get into this, it is fair to say that the existing law does include a loophole. It does include a distinction between farmers and other people, and it was being exploited by some wealthy individuals. The whole debate, though, is about, okay, let's put those wealthy individuals to one side and say that for most farmers, most of the time, they are farming land which is worth a lot of money, but which is not particularly productive. So you can have a large asset in the form of a farm that you've got, and let's say for the sake of argument that your family has had for generations, you're making a very small income off it, while producing food and feeding the world and all that sort of thing, which we all think is important. So, but producing a very small income, and yet at the point of your death, when your family comes to inherit it, because the value of the land is so high, they are hit with a bill that means it's completely uneconomic to hold on to the farm. And I think it's fair to say, just as we want to accept that there are people abusing the system to make investments, there are people for whom that is a real situation. And that although you can say, well, hang on a minute, once you put in the spousal allowance, once you put in the various other allowances that you've got, we're not talking £1 million, we're talking more like £3 million, and not very many farms are worth that. Still, quite a lot of farms are worth that. This is quite a big bill that is going to affect some people. And I think the bigger argument here is that although that's the immediate cause of the protests, there are lots of other things that farmers have been upset about, in terms of the difficulty of making money out of farming in the UK at the moment. The amount of money it costs to farm versus the amount of money you get from selling your produce to largely supermarkets is pretty small, and so it's a really tough living to have. So that argument is going on. The government has said that it isn't going to move. There are a number of analysts who've said, well, there's two different kinds of, arguably three different kinds of analysis going on. There's the kind of analysis that goes, hang on a minute, this is just a massive tax loophole. It's not a problem. People need to get over it. Why is it that, for example, James Dyson, who's a multi-millionaire UK businessman made Dyson vacuum cleaners, amongst other things, has bought up immense tracts of land, and because of this loophole, and is one of the main protesters against it. And people are saying, "Hang on a minute, this is not who we're trying to defend here. You are not a proper farmer," which is fair. So there's the attack on that sort of use of the loophole. There's the what you might call ordinary farmers who are saying, well, this really is a problem for me. And then you can argue that they may or may not have been badly advised and they could make different tax decisions. But as it stands, they do feel genuinely threatened by it. And then there's lots of people whose expertise is in tax. So the Institute for Fiscal Studies, there's a retired tax lawyer who does a lot of work around this called Dan Needle, who's done a lot of investigation into this, who come up with various different answers about the extent to which this is going to be a cause of financial hardship and ways in which the government could tweak the policy a bit to make it better. But in the meantime, the farmers have been A, very cross, B, out in Westminster protesting, and the government isn't yet moving, but is under quite a lot of pressure on it.